Hello, hello. What's going on, you guys? Waiting for you guys to pile on in, and then we'll get started. Logan's in the chat. What's up, Logan? All right, Efren's in the chat. Second, sweet, you guys. Let's see here. It was pouring today. It was awesome. Jose's in the chat. Evan's in the chat. Let's see here. Thirf. I bet you guys say third like that. Just kidding. All right, let's pull some stuff over here. So I'll give you guys another couple minutes to pile in, and then we'll talk about the rest of this stuff. Angel's here. What's up, Angel? Yeah, as far as watching the live stream and eating, Jose, what you eating? Last night for actually not last night. Well, yeah, I had leftovers last night. But Tuesday night after class, my wife had made albondigas, and it was phenomenal. Because after a rough live stream, I was like, oh my gosh, I just want a hot meal. And it was perfect. It was so good. Let's see. Today we are going to be we're going to be starting off with our project, and then we're going to be working through that project, and then I'm going to finish all the reviews on the rest of the bouncy ball assignments, so that if you guys haven't had yours graded yet, you can stick around. And then if you've already had yours reviewed and graded and stuff, you guys can just hop off the live stream. But I owe it to several of you guys to give you a live review on your work that you've done, and so I want to make sure I do that. But I definitely we need to get in this project today and talk about it and go through it. So we're going to start there. Let's see here in the chat. Someone's going to, let's see. Evan's going to eat a burger soon. Chicken and mac and cheese. That sounds great. Can I watch the live stream and do homework and eat at the same time? I mean, if you're talented like that, you could pay attention. Sure, why not? All right, guys. So we are moving on to typography. Typography, what is it? Basically fonts and type and how they are arranged inside of like design, right? Now, typography is actually something that you might not think would be really prevalent, but it's actually a big part of animation and motion design, specifically motion design, because everywhere you look, there's typography inside of films, videos, interviews. When you guys watch interviews, for instance, in an interview, you see what's called a lower third, where it shows the person's name and maybe their title or what they're doing. Like if you watch like TV shows, true crimes, things like that, and they'll introduce who's talking there. Text on screen when you're watching documentaries and they have information to show. Advertisements, medication advertisements, all sorts of stuff, right? In film, you think of like credits, the end credits, beginning credits, your title sequence always has typography in it too. So typography is actually really important. And, designers will know people who understand typography and who don't. And knowing how to animate type and how to arrange it appropriately in a composition is important when it comes to getting jobs, because a lot of these jobs, even if when you're not doing like cartoons and stuff like that, but a lot of these jobs are going to be like, hey, can you do typography? That's a big part of what we need done. And so you better show that you have like a good sense of design when it comes to type. So Yeah, huge role in graphic design. Mostly graphic design. That's essentially what like motion design is, right? It's a mix of graphic design and animation. And so as motion designers, we're both animators and designers. And so we need to start thinking specifically with this word right here, right? In that design mentality when we're putting together scenes inside of After Effects or Cinema 4D or Adobe Animate, design, color choice, font choice, all that kind of stuff, composition and layout is going to help you make better projects. And the more and more you get used to it, and the more you start to understand the rules, the better you will become at it. Now, big things when thinking about typography. First is font choice, right? There's a joke within the design community about papyrus and those fonts that are extremely recognizable right away. And people make fun of that. You know, it's very outdated font choices. And we don't like to see that. A lot of times we like to see serif and sans serif font choices. And so, you know, sometimes minimalism is best. It just kind of depends on your design work. But in this class right now, this semester, I implore you guys to really just go minimal with font choices and mixing fonts, because it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of understanding to do. And so when we're in class, right, we're really wanting to be able to read our type. And if you have something that's like a script font or something really cartoony looking, it just isn't very legible and it's kind of jarring when it comes to watching something. And so that's why I kind of limit the types of fonts that you guys can use in this class, because learning the basics and learning the rules is most important. And then you can expand beyond that and break the rules a little bit more. But for this class, let's stick within those bounds of that. Now, this is an amazing video right here. The Future does, this is, first of all, great design and business knowledge website to go to, but he started a YouTube channel where he gives design and business information. He's a graphic designer. I think David something, I think his name is, but he wrote these typography rules essentially. And so there's a video here for you guys to watch about typography. And I actually grabbed the manual for you as well that goes along with the video here to talk about the rules of typography and how you should use it, right? Especially when it comes to hierarchy, alignment, font size, those type of things. And so I'm going to go ahead and open this. We're going to download this typography manual real quick. And then we're going to open it up. Here. And this is available to you guys as well. And just maybe kind of go through this quickly. What's up, Eric? So, flush left, right? Alignment, learning to have everything aligned like to the left alignment is smart. Center alignment will sometimes use inside of animations and stuff, but in general, because this is design, this is for graphic designers specifically. But in general, when we're doing stuff, we want to have a left alignment on our text here. So learning to have that alignment is appropriate. Using one typeface, like I was saying, not mixing typefaces together, is very important when you're starting out, because it can get very jumbled and it actually takes a really long time to kind of go through typefaces together. So staying with one typeface until you get really good at it, right? You'll hear me say serif and sans serif. What is serif and sans serif? Let's see if we get to that. I don't know. I don't think it does, actually. Let me see. Okay. Serif font is a font kind of what you would associate with modern typography, right? So it doesn't have the little feet at the bottom of the text. It's very flat, very, very straight, very modern. as far as like what you're looking at it. And Helvetica is a great example of that, and that's a huge popular font that a lot of people use. Now, sans serif, I'm sorry, sans serif with the feet, without the feet. Let me see here. Cool. Sounds good, Eric. Let me see. I might have mixed it up. Sometimes I mix it up. I just want to make sure I get it right. Sans serif without the feet. With the feet? Sans serif means without the feet, I'm pretty sure. So I might have to flip it around. Okay, yeah. So this is, I'm sorry, not a serif font, but a sans serif font. Because sans is French for without. That's why I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. So sans serif is without the little feet. Now, serif font is going to be like your Times New Roman, where it has the little lines at the top and bottom of the font, like this. This is a serif font, right? If it's got these little hangers right here, these are serif fonts. And then the sans serif usually is most popular. I have collected several sans serif and serif fonts for you guys to use, and I will show you guys how to install those here once we get to the project. But important, use one typeface in here and just don't mix those. Skipping a weight. So when this has to do with hierarchy, right? Hierarchy is in design is the way that we look at things first to last, right? So when we look at this page, the first thing that we notice is the bold font. We're going to notice the 3, the skip a weight, and then likely our eyes are going to travel down here, right? Because it's bold. We have bold writing down here as well. And then a little bit of a heavier writing, and then we have the body. So our eyes kind of travel from top to the bottom and then to the center. And that was done purpose, right? Because this down here is an example. Oops, did not mean to do that. What is happening? I think it's just my graphics card acting up. Let's make this bigger. There we go. And so when, instead of mixing two different font types, what we do is we skip weights. And so, like, if we were using this Helvetica, and for instance, with this paragraph, we have bold for the title, skip away, and then we have a light or a regular font for the body. And just by skipping that font weight, it just helps us to develop that hierarchy when we're putting together and organizing our scene. Double the point size is a good rule to remember when using hierarchy as well, right? Because we look at bold and size, and then we're going to move our way down, right? The bigger, the bolder the text is, that's the first stuff we're going to look at. And the, smaller and thinner the text is the last stuff that we're going to look at. The more minimal thing that it appears is going to be the last things that we're reading. And so thinking about how you want your viewer to read something on a print or whatever you're designing with typography, like for instance a magazine page, you learn to take that person's eye and move it around the page by using font weight and font size. So for instance, if you're using a size 15 font and then you have to use something for the title, you're going to want to use double that font, right? Double the point size. So it would be 30 for the title and 15 for the body. Aligning to one axis. So making sure that your type is aligned with each other. So when I hold down shift and I draw a line here, everything is at the same line, like horizontally. And then if I were to draw a line right here, all the way down. Oh, let me do this. Holding down shift and drawing a line all the way down. All of this font is, all of this type or the text that's on page is aligned to the left, including this 1701, right? So making sure things are aligned to axes will also help. It helps our mind to organize things. Our minds want to automatically organize text when we see it and wants to read it. And so that's like a big thing when you're having text on screen, is obviously we want people to be able to read it or else it wouldn't be there. So having it organized, having it aligned, having the hierarchy of size and font weight is really important as well to communicate that text. But not only that, when we're watching an animated video, the biggest thing is having it on screen long enough for our viewer to read, right? Like if we had this whole entire if we had this entire paragraph here with all these different font names or types, and we put that on screen for like a half a second, that's not going to give us nearly enough time that we need to read through it. So making sure that you can read your text out loud when you have it on screen is very important. If you're reading it aloud and you're struggling to get through and you're like trying to catch your breath at the end, then you know you might need to extend that composition so that the text is on screen long enough. Group by using rules. Use rules and lines to group related blocks of information. So shapes, we've got a square shape, and the word shapes is aligned to that rectangle shape right here, which unifies both the object that's in there and the text that's on screen. Yes, serif with feet, sans without, correct. Thank you, Ethan. Avoiding corners. Okay, this is a hard one with students usually in their first, like when they're first learning design, right? So if I were to take this R and move it over to the right until this section of the R that would be off, you know, the rest of this. If this part right here, the very side of the R were aligned with the edge of the composition or the image, it just gives it kind of an uneasy feeling. We just want to, you know, similar to how Uncanny Valley, how they say that if you don't get the facial features on a person right, it makes you feel off when you're looking at an image. And so, you know, we want to be conscious of those things when we're placing our text on screen. And so that's why if you're going to butt it up to the edge, you better run it off screen instead of having it butt right up to the edge of the composition, because it doesn't look good, and it just gives us all an uneasy feeling when reading it. Also, don't put things in corners, right? That's an obvious one. And we're going to use the title action sequence in today's project a lot. In fact, you guys are going to get very used to using that, because the title action sequence is going to help us avoid those corners and to know where maybe we need to place our text. Mind the gap is minding the spacing in between your lines, minding the spacing in between your letters. So spacing in between letters is called kerning. And you know, there's a tight kerning on this text right here, but it all looks good, right? Everything runs together. If you're to increase the kerning, so what happens is the letters start to spread away from each other, and you've increased that too much, it makes it unlegible. You can't really read it. It makes it hard to read. It looks like just a bunch of letters thrown on screen. Same with line spacing, right? Like how far away this line is to this line, and this line is to this line, and so on and so forth. So making sure that there's enough room both within the type itself and then within a paragraph or a body of text is important. So you guys won't want to read all this stuff further, but the italics, we're going to kind of stay away from italic mostly in class. Italics you should reserve for, you know, like specialty things, especially when we're dealing with animation. It's better, italics is better for like print and graphic design type things. Sometimes we'll use italics, or like animating it into an italic instead of being like a regular font is okay to do. But just in this class, we're likely going to not use it as much. We will in one instance today to show hierarchy, but other than that, it's kind of rare that we put italics into our type. And then, so you guys, I want you to go through all of this on your own, save it, keep it, look at it, and also to watch the video, because this is kind of like an animated version of that typography manual. Very, very informative. So I want you guys to go through and read that. And then here is our actual project for this week. So Typography in Motion project, right? These are the allowed fonts that I've gathered from like the future, and they're all Google fonts that I've grabbed here. And so all you guys have to do is download this folder. And if you're not unsure how to install the fonts, you can watch this video right here and it will help you to do that. I believe that I actually have them right here. Perfect. So it comes zipped, right? Because it's a zip file, so it's compressed. So you'll have to unzip the file before you go ahead and download the fonts. But you just want to open up the folder. And I have them separated from sans serif and serif fonts. And you can just go in here and select all of these, right click, and install or install for all users, whatever you want to do. And so you can just kind of view quickly where these fonts are. And then you'll know the names of them as well. And then as far as the sans serif, these are some good ones. I like to use this Poppins one. This is probably my favorite font this year that I've been working around with. I used to, I work with a lot of my clients use this Montserrat font, and you know, it's cool, but it's starting to feel a little bit outdated to me. But more than welcome for you guys to use it and stuff. It only feels that way to me because so many companies I work with use it, and so I see it all the time. But today I'll likely be using the Poppins font. Let me just make sure that I've got it all installed. I'm going to right click, install for all users. And then what will happen is there's like this little, it was just like a progress bar that popped up that showed that all the fonts were installing. So I'm just going to close that, but that is there for you guys. Now, we're going to be putting together several different scenes today of different ways to animate type. And we're going to be mashing them all together in one video, so compositing everything into one and rendering it out for your project. And then also you're going to actually be putting it onto Discord to share with the class if needed. Let me see here. I don't think this... Actually, this might be good. Who was having issues with, was it, who was having issues with the, media encoder with their Mac computer last class? Just let me know in the chat if you're still in here. But this is just how to make like a tiny MP4 if you guys need to. So if that's up there, let me see if it's still in the student view. I thought I removed it a while ago, but it's not a big deal if it's still there. Yeah, you guys can watch this if you want to. It just shows you how to make a small MP4 if you're having troubles uploading it to like Discord or something. We used to have this available for uploading to Slack when we use Slack as our main communication software, but Slack limited the amount that you could upload, so it was always a hassle. But I don't think Discord does that, so you guys might not actually even need this. But so we're going to be creating 5 different text animations for this assignment. All of the links to the past tutorials are below except for the one in Cinema 4D, which I'm going to start with today, and then I'll update the link. But we're going to be creating a scene that says, the text will say good, better, best, and we're going to be updating the easing. So it's going to be good easing, better easing, and best easing. We're going to do a fading typography scene. We're going to do a contact information scene. So what is this one? It's like a contact card, right? This is what at the beginning and end of those reels where we were talking about having your contact information, or when you guys were reading about animation reels. This is important. These are important to have for that. And so we're going to be kind of future proofing that for your reel today. We're going to be creating a contact information scene in class. And then you guys will follow along with this and create this one. And then you're also going to create a contact scene, but it'll be with your own like creative design, right? So you're going to have one that's going to mimic what I do in class. And you're going to have one here that you're going to design fully on your own. You can design the background, all of it, the type, you know, and just kind of get creative with the skills and information and knowledge that you currently know about animation and typography. So there's not an actual tutorial for this part. You're going to actually use all of that stuff on your own, and it's going to be like your time to get creative and have fun. Remember, less is kind of more sometimes, because the more I have to view, the more I have to, the more that I'm looking at, right, the more there is to give feedback on. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want to have a lot of feedback, you might want to stick with something more minimal, but you guys can still have fun. I've seen some really cool contact information cards. And then finally, handling typography in Cinema 4D. This is the one we're going to start with today. And you're going to be basically just putting your name inside of a 3D scene and setting up the cameras and throwing on materials and just kind of having a quick animation with the camera on that one. So we're going to start with this one. This one takes a little bit more. I need to update the video because the other one was pretty outdated, especially in comparison to the new Cinema 4D software like update that we've had recently. Now, I have the deliverables here, right? It says, I want to see a single MP4 of your typography project. Please make sure to composite all 5 scenes into one video. And then you're going to just post it to Discord. So other students, you're just going to share your work with others, the class, basically. And then for the video, these are the following scenes that you should have, right? And then this is just kind of what I'm looking for when I start to grade it for the rubric. All right, let's get started. None of these come with templates, by the way. We're going to be setting these all up in class today. So let me leave this view. Let me move this back over here. All right. We are rolling. Okay, so first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my template folder. And we're going to copy and paste it. Let's make sure that's right. Perfect. Control C, Control V, rename it. I'm going to rename this one O2 Typography. There we go. And I'm going to open Cinema 4D, so let's see if I have it over here. The one thing that I did do, Max on. Let's do it through the app, actually. Oh, wait, I have it right down here. I couldn't see over my mic. I was like, I have this. All right, so we've got our folder all set up. We're just going to open Cinema 4D. This one is 2023 version. Let's see if I have the 2024 version. I want to have the one that you guys have, because you will be starting with the 2024. Maxon, not the app. 2024 team render. This one right there. All right, so opening off to the side. The one thing that I might have to do, actually, and I had to talk with another student about this weekend, but with the Adobe, again, I'll mention the Adobe software, you are allowed to have, like, be signed in to your Adobe account, both on like multiple computers. I think you can have up to 2 computers with your Adobe login. And that means having like After Effects and all that kind of stuff installed on 2 computers. But unfortunately with Cinema 4D, that is not the case. Cinema 4D only allows you to have your license on 1 computer at a time. And so let me release this one because I don't want to use my Cinema 4D Lite. And I'm just going to click release. My stream was getting a little jittery there, but I want to make sure that this goes to my desktop and not my laptop that it's on right now. I'll select that. Yes, I want to release it. And so now when I close this and I go into Maxon, The student license seems to be working. Let me reopen it just in case. Actually, let me open the manager here. What's the app to update? I think it should be okay. Let me open it again just to double check. What version is this? If you guys want to know what version, learn more. Okay. I think you can. Oh, no. The version is right here for it. There was something else that I was looking at before, but I think we should be okay. Let me remove this and reopen. Sometimes what's likely is going to happen is you'll have to just restart Cinema 4D in order for it to just pull your license over. So that's what we're doing. We're opening it. Are you guys excited to get into 3D stuff a little bit more? It's kind of heavy, but it's still fun. Casey does some really fun stuff in his classes with 3D. All right. So 3D, Cinema 3D, or 4D, I'm sorry, is open and ready to go. I'm going to shut my camera off so that you guys can see the software, because we are definitely going to be working down here in this attributes panel. The first thing that we want to do, right, is we want to save our project so that we don't do all this work and lose it. So I'm going to go to save as. I'm going to move to my typography folder, my 3D folder, Cinema 4D files, and I'm just going to type in typography 3D. I'm going to save that. So now I can save my project as we go. And check project settings, right? So Control D to bring up project settings. Mine are already brought up here. We're going to change the frames per second to 24 frames a second. And I want to do about 5 seconds on this. So we're going to 24 times 5. I should know this by now, but it's 120 frames. Last time we did about 3 seconds and it was too short. And so I think a 5-second animation here will be long enough, because it's just going to be highlighting your name in here. Now, when you are, what's nice is with this update, they recently created a backdrop primitive for you to throw in. So you guys actually don't have to create a backdrop, but in case you do, I did link that how to create a backdrop manually inside of the module for you guys. But the first thing I want to do is set up my scene here. And so I'm going to put a backdrop in to my scene. I'm going to select backdrop here, primitive, and just click it, and it will auto generate here into my stage. Now, again, I can move around, clicking 1 to move, clicking 2 to zoom in and out, dollying in and out, and then 3 to rotate. And that is rotating and moving my world view right now, right? So I don't have any cameras in here. I'm not looking at any cameras, but I can move myself around the world here to get a better view. Now, when I look at this, this is okay, but we really want it longer and more extended out in the front, so we get this nice long backdrop that kind of looks infinite here. And so when you add a backdrop and you click on it in your objects panel up at the top, down here in your attributes panel, you have the option to expand things like your width. So we're going to just kind of drag that so I can't see it off screen. And then you can push your, I'll just make this a nice 1500 so it's even. And then the height is going to be how tall it is. Let's go ahead and just bring that up to 375. Depth is going to be how far back, if I move to a different angle here, you can see kind of how far back this goes. So let's kind of put ourselves back to where we were before. Maybe looking a little bit down more. And I'm just going to push the depth back to 450 because then I'm also going to extend it out at the front so I don't have to see my world floor, right? And the rounding is just going to increase the roundness of that backdrop there. So I can just increase that a little bit. I think before, what was it, 50? We'll just do 100. And I think that'll give, what'll happen is it'll give a nice smooth looking backdrop kind of curve to it instead of kind of jarring one. In fact, I will increase that more instead of like just a joint that you'll see, like a hard edge. Now, the backdrop is in. Let's go ahead and add some text. Normally, you would think that you could click here and add the primitive, or this text tool, you could just click that and add something in. Well, that is a text spline. And a spline is like a path, so it's invisible. You have to actually extrude and add geometry to it. And so that's not the one that we want to use. The one that we want to use is going to just be the text. So you're just going to long click, select text, and then the text will auto generate here into our field. Now, obviously my name is not text. It could be text if you call me Tex, if I were from Texas. Like text here, right? But that's not my name. So down here in this attributes panel, you get the option to change your text here to whatever you want it to say. You can change how deep that text is. So like how far back this way that text goes. The subdivisions is something we'll kind of get to later, but you don't have to increase that right now, and we're not animating it, so it's not a big deal. We're gonna we can middle align this or left align this, either one, but this isn't a big deal because we're not gonna have multiple lines of text. But what you can also do here is change your font type and then the font weight. You can update there how tall your name is. Kerning, right? Horizontal spacing, the space between each letter. And vertical spacing if you had, which is your line spacing, right? So if you had multiple lines here. The kerning, there's also a different kerning here. Let me just increase the horizontal space, which is kerning. But this one, I'm not sure what this one does. Most likely not really touching that. Let's just kind of go back to 0 and we'll see what it looks like, and maybe we will have to eventually adjust them, but for now let's kind of start with a base. So I'm going to type my name. Ooh, or not. Let me select here. How do I turn my camera? I can hold down 3 and click and drag, or up here in the upper right corner you have the option to move, zoom, and rotate. So you can just click and move these around and it will do that in there. So the shape, how do I change the shape of the object? Well, we're not going to change the shape right now just quite yet. We'll get to like modeling and stuff a little bit later. Right now we're just going to work with primitives, which is essentially what this is. Let me grab that text. Let me type my name in. I'm going to type Manhamikara. That's my full name. We're going to change this font to that Poppins. I know we were talking about it. So probably just going to do the Poppins regular right now. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Obviously, my name is way too big in comparison to my stage back here, and so I'm just going to click center so it center aligns it to my name, just so it makes it a little bit easier. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to, we can put bold, let's just do regular. I think I like regular the best. Let's decrease the height here so that it's not so tall, maybe 100. And looks like we need to decrease let's keep the height at 150. And then if I hit T on my keyboard to scale this object down, and I'm just going to click off. Okay, so if I click on one of these, it's all locked here. But normally if you were to grab one coordinate and move it, it will just move it in that in that specific direction, but because we're still working with primitives, when you go to scale them, they scale evenly, okay? And so I'm going to just kind of bring that down a little bit more. Probably going to have to dolly my camera out a little bit more to get a good view here. Zoom in. Probably move a little bit more over to this side. And then I'm just going to have to adjust my backdrop, right? So expand the height, expand 50. Let's expand the width to 2500. Let's expand the extension out, not the depth, but the extension to like 5, more than that. Let's do 1000 right there. And so now when I'm looking here, I can see my full name. It's pretty much centered almost in my shot, right? If I measure this amount of space to this amount of space, it's about half there. So maybe I could just kind of move my view a little bit over to, let's do this. Let's hold down 1 and we're just going to move our view. Oh, undo that. Oh, redo everything again. Hold on 1 second. It just 2500, 550. The depth is fine. The extension, I did 1000. There we go. I'm going to select that. And now I want to maybe just move my view over a little bit here. And the reason I'm being particular about my view at the moment, because I'm going to set a camera in here to be kind of my starting view on my object, right? I'm going to go over here. I want to make it a little bit more, I want to add a little more depth to this object. So I'm going to type 25 and that looks pretty good there, that 25 depth. How do I change the shape? Because you have the cube. So if you long press, if you click and hold for a second and then let go, you will get all of these other options for primitive right here, Angel. And then same with the text here. So whenever there is this tiny little triangle in the corner of your toolbar on one of the tools, it means that there's more in there for you to look at. So all you got to do is long press and let go, and then it gives you that option under the T for text, and then you want to select the text and not the text spline. Okay. It might be. I'm not sure about that, Efren. It could be an issue. It could not be an issue. You will have more of a problem, I think, using redshift materials if you're trying to use them, because you have to use redshift lighting and stuff as well. So you can always, if you're having troubles using it, right, you can always go back to the 2023 version and use that one instead. So there's the option to do that as well. So if you want to try it out with 2024, you can do that and then always regress back to the other one if you want to. But I've got my text all set up here. Everything pretty much looks good to me. I don't think there's really necessary to change the kerning or the spacing of my text here. I think that it's spaced out fairly nicely. But if you guys have, like, some students have certain letters of their names that, like for instance, J's, Y, that have like the little hanging foot that hangs down from the letter. And if that's the case, just bring your type up so that I can see the whole thing, right? Because we want to see the whole actual name and not have it cut off by the backdrop here. So you just want to make sure that you bring that up if you need to. And then if not, your type can sit kind of very closely to the backdrop. And if you have the problem where the spacing between the letters are an issue, right? And maybe you're like, for instance, J's and I's when they're together in a name, usually the J and the I letters are kind of close together and you actually have to manually kern them apart or kind of push them apart, right? So if you're changing the horizontal spacing here and it's still an issue, the rest of it looks fine without the horizontal spacing, but there's just a couple letters that need help. What you can do is you select your text object up at the top and you just hit C on your keyboard. And what that does is it becomes an editable object now. It's no longer a primitive. It, in fact, has created a little folder here, like a nest, that my whole name is in. So now I have to, if I'm clicking down, dropping this nest down, it's separated my name Amanda and my last name Akara. And then you have the option to select separate letters and move them around, right? But be very mindful of this. Only do this if it's necessary right now, because this is a little bit more something that we're going to touch on a little later, but it's okay if you need to at the moment, right? So like maybe my, later, what if I wanted to animate my text kind of each letter separately? You could have the option to do that, right? But we're not actually animating the text itself. We're just going to animate a camera. And I keep talking about this camera, but let's actually put it into our scene so that we can kind of set up our shot here. And so if you go over here to the right hand side, there's these different cameras, and these are, I think I don't know if these ones are redshift. When you're long clicking on the light and your environment right here, and then your lighting objects right here, if it has RS next to it, it usually means redshift. So when I hover over here, it says RS Sun and Sky Rig. Redshift is what RS stands for. Standard camera and standard lighting, but I actually need a specific camera, right? I want to have a camera that kind of locks onto my object here. So no matter where I move that camera, it's going to be focused on my object here, which is my name. And so if you need to find, you don't actually have to know where everything is inside of Cinema 4D in order to find it. All you have to do is hit Shift and C, and then you're going to get this command center box here. And then you're going to type in target, if I can spell, Target, and you're going to have a bunch of options here. These are different things that are in Cinema 4D. And we actually want to grab a target camera. So I'm just going to select that, double click it, and it's going to automatically add it into my scene over here on the right hand side. Now it added two different objects here. It added a camera, and then it added a camera target. We need to tell the camera what it needs to look at. If we don't tell the camera what it needs to look at, it's just going to look out randomly at other things, right? And so in order to update where that target is, you just select the camera target object and you just move. And there's nothing here. It's empty, right? If you want to see what the target, technically the target is this little cube right here, or this circle, sorry. This little circle right there is what oh, no, this one is the cube. The circle's my mouse, sorry. So the cube is just kind of a visual representation of what your camera target is. If you want to see it, you can just change the shape of that target right here. So if I want to see what it's pointing at, I can change it to an octagon, or I can change it to a star. And if I zoom in here, you can see that now it's like a star, right? And it's not going to show up in your render. It's just there to show you where that target is. And so I'm actually going to, it's pretty much centered with my name. If I move around my scene a little bit more, I've got that it's centered in my object. I might want to just move it back a little bit, and maybe in the center right there, in the center of my name. And so now I've got my target tag place where I want it to go, but I have to tell it, I believe I have to tell it what it's looking at, right? And so, is it in here? No. And so with the camera target selected, I'm actually going to click and drag my text down to the target. Hold on. Layer. Let's see if it's going to work that way. Camera target. Click on attributes. Object. Can just change it to none. Oh, with this one, you actually don't need to. Bring the target down. I don't think so. Let's see if we do need to change where the target tag is attached to, but I think we'll be okay. But if I want to look back at that view, right? Like I moved my world view around and I'm all sorts of crazy now, and I'm not back in that view where I wanted to start. Well, thankfully, because I didn't have my camera selected, I wasn't moving my camera, right? I was just moving my space and I had the target selected. If I want to look through this camera here, I've got to just click these little square brackets, and then it'll bring me right into that camera view. I am noticing that maybe it's a little bit far to the, like it's a little too far looking to the right here. So I'm going to need to adjust that. Let's see if we move the target a little bit over. Actually, we'll move the camera a little bit over. So in order to move the camera, you have to be looking within the camera view, right? So right now I'm looking through the camera, and you have to select the camera layer, and then you can hold down the same. If you hold down the 1, 2, or 3, it will allow you to move your camera if you need to, right? So I kind of need to move over a little bit here this way, but it's not, the movement isn't happening the same way as if you were not looking through the camera right now, because there's a target that the camera is specifically looking at. Let me see if I can drag this in here actually. Text into the layer. It doesn't let that happen. Okay. Just checking. I'm going to adjust my target tag right there. Right about there. Now, that I've got my shot all set up, right? I've got my camera in place. I'm looking through my camera here. I want to start to animate this camera so I can have like a smooth motion, a smooth like rotation essentially around my name. Well, because we're using a camera target, like a special camera that is looking at a target, I only have to animate the position of the camera, and I get all of this rotation for free, right? So if I just move the X position of my camera, I get all of this rotation for free because it's always looking at that target. If I didn't have the target there, it wouldn't look at it, right? So I'm going to start right about there, and I'm going to, let me manually type -40, what is it, 450? I don't know, right there is good. And I'm going to make sure, let's bring up our keyframes here, expand this a little bit, and bringing my playhead all the way to the beginning. And I am going to keyframe my positions, and then I'm going to move all the way to the end, all the way to 120 frames here at the end. And I'm just going to move my camera. Let's go ahead and see. I'm going to hit 1, and I'm just going to kind of do a nice smooth rotation. These lines here are what the camera, essentially I think this is the view that the camera sees. And so this section that's kind of grayed out, I don't believe will show up in your shot. But I'm going to keep moving. Maybe up a little bit more. Maybe I don't want to zoom in quite yet. Let's update that target. So maybe the target keeps my name in view, right? So maybe it's not all the way over. And just kind of a subtle motion is what we want. I'm going to go ahead and keyframe, right? Because I have to lock in these position changes that I made. If I don't record it and I move, it will not keep the animation. So let's start here, and we're just going to kind of play this. Great. And it did not. So, oh, because I selected my target. That is exactly why. I selected my target and keyframe the camera target, and I don't want to do that. Kind of can get a little confusing there. So I'm just going to delete that and make sure that I'm selected on the actual camera, my objects. Keyframe this initial keyframe right here. Maybe I'm going to move it over just a little bit. I can see this part of the this section right here of the edge of the backdrop. So I'm going to just push in a little bit more here. Move over, let's see, move over a bit this way. Zoom out a little bit more so we can see the full name. There we go. That's not a bad start right there. All right. Grab these, my camera. Make sure that I re-record this new spot that I ended up in. Now I'm going to shorten this. Let's see here. Nope. I'm just going to bring this all the way over to frame 120. Then again, I'm going to just kind of hold down 1 and move my camera to a different view. Right there's not bad. Maybe I zoom in slightly. Right. And then I'm going to, again, with my camera selected, record these new values. Right there. So now, if I hit H down here, I bring this all the way and I start to play it. You've got this nice, slow, kind of animated rotation happening around my name. You might have to update where your camera target tag is in order for it to kind of keep your name centered in the shot. You want to try and keep your name as centered as possible within the view of the camera, right? Because we don't want to have it too off center. Like, it's not going to be perfectly centered the entire time because we are rotating and changing position at the same time. But as long as it's mainly in the center of your composition, you'll be fine. Now this looks good, except when we animate camera movements, it just kind of depends. Since the camera starts and stops during the entire animation, having the camera eased is not a terrible thing, right? But if for some reason, like if you look at shots, animated shots of like, you know, when people create those, how do I want to say, like, let me see if I can bring it up. 3D environment shots. Right, let's look at those images. The camera movement that they have within these shots is linear. It doesn't actually have that slowing down and speeding up effect to it because you want the shot to move consistently at the same speed through your entire shot. Now, because the camera is starting to move when the beginning of the animation happens and then slows down and stops at the end of the animation, that's fine. But if we were planning to cut it at the beginning and end, we would want to make this linear. So I would go to my F curves and I would actually just click this button here, and that turns all of my keyframes into linear keyframes. And so now when I watch it, it's consistently the same speed across the entire animation. You just wouldn't want to show the starting and stopping of that. So like if I were to play this back to someone, I'd want it to start maybe around the 4th frame and end maybe around frame 116, so that when I play it, it's just constantly in motion no matter what. It's always moving, and it's always moving at the same speed. Versus if I'm going to show the full animation, I might want that easing to happen, so I would just click back on that and ease. And you can always click and drag to kind of accentuate those easings, right? Holding down Control will hold Shift for you. And so now when I play it, the camera has easing to it. All right, so we've got our camera all animated. We've got our scene all set up, but now we need to add materials and lights to our scene. If I were to, let's stop the animation and let's kind of just bring it back here, and we're going to not look in our camera. We actually we can lock our camera here. If you select your camera and you hit Shift C and you type in tag, or actually type in protection, you can add a protection tag. Remember, you guys had those on the bouncing ball project. This is what locks objects in here from being adjusted or moved. So I'm just going to double click and add a protection tag to this camera so I can't accidentally click in it and move it. I'm also going to look out of my camera here so that I am not in there. But if I pull down on my scene, and you can see the actual camera there, and then I start playing, right? If I played this animation, it's actually because I have the protection tag you have to remove, I think, in order for it to animate. There we go. We can see the camera animating. We can actually see that path that it's moving around, which is pretty cool. So if you can add the protection tag if you want to on it, but just if not, just make sure you're not clicking around on there. And I'm going to, because that was the only thing we were going to have animated, I'm just going to kind of drop that down there. And I'm going to bring my shot in a little bit more so I can see it. We're going to add some lights. The first thing that I want to do is over here, I'm going to long click, and then I'm going to grab a spotlight. And this is a redshift spotlight. It is a redshift one. So it says RS here. If you're working in 2023, it might not have the option for the redshift one. It might just say standard, which is also okay. They work a little bit differently. In order for materials to work with, they have to, like, certain redshift materials have to work with redshift lighting. So that's something you'll have to remember when we start looking for materials here in a minute. But I'm going to just, there's a way to set up a scene. I don't know if you guys have ever gone and done like beauty shots or anything like that, or been to like a studio, a photography studio. But there's usually a lighting setup that you have inside of a photography studio. Let's go ahead and type studio lighting. And there's usually a main light that is lighting the subject, right? The main lighting of the subject. And then there's what we call a key light, which is a light that's off to the side. It's not as intense. Maybe it's a different color, or a different temperature of lighting, like a warmth or something like that. Setup diagram. This is great. And that's kind of how that's what we're going to essentially replicate here, right? So if we were to look at this picture, and let's click down in that. Well, hello, sir. Okay. When we look at this picture, you have your subject right here. And here's the main light that is lighting up the subject. These lights are just, it says they're just above eye level of this subject, and they're kind of going to backlight him, right? So they're going to backlight from the side, and it's going to be a soft backlighting, and that is how they get that kind of rim lighting effect that's right there on his shoulders and right there over off of his shoulders. But then we have the light directly in front of him, which is illuminating his face, right? And so we're going to do something kind of like that. We're not going to go behind the object, our name, but we are going to go off to the side. So the first one that we're going to do, I'm probably going to move it up, move it back. We're just kind of like moving this light into position, maybe up a little bit more. I might go into my different views here to kind of see maybe where I can move that light to. I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to bring that light up a little bit. You can see my name. You can see my name object right there, right? And then you can actually see the studio backdrop right there. And I just kind of want to maybe focus this in. I'm going to hit R for rotation. I'm going to drop that down a little bit so it's more pointed towards my object. And then we want to just expand essentially that lighting. Let's see if we can do that. I'm going to click into this view. I think that if you grab this little dot in the center of the light, that's going to change the intensity and essentially like a focal length of your light, like the spotlighting effect there. Maybe bring that up. I'm going to select the light here, and over in the attributes panel, I'm going to go to object, and I just want to find out how to expand these redshift lights a little bit differently. Let's see. Not the exposure. This is the exposure here of the light. 1 is pretty intense. Let's go to 0.25. You can change the color of your lighting here if you wanted to. So if I wanted red lighting, I could do that. Subtle lighting is probably better, right? You can also go, instead of mode for color, you can do temperature, or you can do color and temperature. So maybe the temperature, I want to drop it down so it's a warmer light, or bring it up so it's a cooler light. You can do that as well. I'm probably going to do just temperature, and then drop this down just slightly, just a hair, to make it a warmer one. And then this cone angle is what I'm going to bring out. I'm going to just kind of drag out to expand. Probably a 70 will be okay. And then I'm going to move this light. I'm going to go back into my different views here. I'm actually going to move this light, I think, over to the, this is going to be my key light. I'm going to move it a little bit over to the left of here. And then I'm going to rotate it so it is pointing a little bit more to my subject. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this camera. So a couple ways I can do that. If I zoom out here and I hit E on my keyboard to grab these movement tools, and I hold down Control and I click, and I can drag and add an additional light in here, right? Which is kind of neat. So I can just move that up, and then I want to just adjust the angle so it's pointing the opposite way. So I'm going to hit rotation. I'm going to bring that over so it's lighting the other side essentially of my subject. Maybe move it over just a hair more, rotate it just a little bit until I can get it kind of lit from both sides. And then I want to come in here. I'm going to select this. I can rename these lights here. I can put RS Spotlight _ main. And then this RS Spotlight, I can do _ key. So that's my key light, right? That's my, or I'm sorry, a fill light. Sorry. Key light is your main one. So I could change this to key, and then this one to fill. And this, the fill light is just supposed to fill in the shadows, right? Let me learn how to spell. ILL. There we go. And we want to soften this light. We don't want this light to be so bright, right? So I'm going to just kind of drop this down a little bit here. Maybe bring the intensity down to like 7,500. 75,000, I'm sorry. Right there seems to be okay. Maybe I'm going to drop the temperature just a little bit more so it's a little bit warmer there. I could also, this one would be a good one to add a color into. So if I wanted it to be maybe like a kind of a warm pinkish color, I could do that. And then the intensity is not going to be that horrible. If I look through my camera right now, I can see, and I hit Control R, will do like a render preview in your viewport. And it's going to kind of show right now how your lighting is. This is a good way to just kind of quickly view. And these little boxes are just doing a quick render of what it's kind of going to look like, right? So maybe I need to intensify this fill light over here just a little bit more. So let's put 85 there, and then hit Control R again while hovering over our viewport, which will allow me to see, okay, it's a little bit brighter. We've also got some hard shadows happening from this main light that we have, the key light. So, and actually when it finishes here, it's not too terrible. Maybe I could even add an additional light over here. So let's kind of get out of here. Oh, I'm looking at my camera. No, no, no. Let me undo that. Let me get out of my camera view, okay? That will happen to you guys. You guys have to remember to not do that because you'll move that camera. So let's just maybe grab this fill light. Maybe we want to tighten that cone angle a little bit more. Increase the intensity a little bit more. Let's see, spotlight, infinite area light. changes the types of light it is. You kind of want a spotlight here, point light. Let me undo that. Keep that spotlight. Let me go to details. Casting a shadow. You want to make sure that shadows are on there. Actually, let's go into our project settings, hitting Control D. And is that one there? You know, it's not project settings. It is our viewport settings. So I'm going to hit Shift C, and I'm going to type in viewport settings. Let me see here. Let me just type settings. Color management, project settings, render settings. Did they get rid of it? Maybe they got rid of it. Or there's a different way to find it. It's okay. I'll figure it out later. Display, color management is fine. Let's go back to here. Let's add some materials and then see what everything looks like, okay? To find materials, you go up to your left-hand side right up here, and you're going to click on this studio, or like this is essentially your asset browser, right? And in here, you can search up all types of things. For instance, if I want to do like some kind of metallic material, I can type metallic in here, and it's going to give me metallic options. Now, if you see that the material, right, because there's going to be different things. There's images here, there's actual models that you can use, there's materials. It will tell you in these little areas what you're looking at, right? If these little red cubes or octagons or whatever you want to call them are up in the corner, that means that that is a redshift material, a redshift object. It is related to redshift, okay? And if you're using regular lighting and regular type of, I think the camera works okay, but you have to have redshift lighting in order to use these materials for them to show up appropriately. And there's different ways to manage them. They look a lot different. They work differently off a node-based system. So if you're having trouble with these materials, opt for one like this, where there is no little red thing up in the top. This is like a standard material inside of Cinema 4D. This might work a little bit better for you. And so if I drag, like let's drag this car paint metal to my name. We're going to just click and drag it over here to my text. And it's going to add that material onto my text here. I'm going to look through my camera. And then I'm going to hit that render preview. In fact, if we come up here to render viewport and I go to render region and I click and drag a region here, let's see there, it's going to just render that specific section, right? So it looks like I need to add some more lighting in here because now the material is extra hard to read. So if I go back to render viewport and I hit Control R, let's see if I have the same issue on this side. The material's looking good. It's going to take a second, and then we're still having issues with this darkness over here. So I'm not 100%, again, I was looking through my camera, undo that, unlook through my camera. I'm more familiar with non-Redshift stuff. Redshift is something that I'm like in the middle of learning right now, so let's just kind of try and figure this out together. Let's first of all add a material to the backdrop. So under if I click up here, there's different categories you can also click on. So I'm going to click that materials category. I'm going to go to ground is going to be like tiling. And that's not going to look good for a backdrop, right? Because there's like this back area. So maybe some kind of plaster would look cool on here. maybe this kind of light gray plaster, and then I can figure out a different color for my actual thing. If you just click and drag it onto the object in your scene, it will also drop it onto that object. Let's do a quick render preview to see what it looks like. That's nice for a backdrop. It's very subtle. It's got like this, a little bit of noise in the floor right here, which also looks nice. So that plaster is going to work. It should. Let's see what it looks like the rest. It's very dark here because of the lighting, right? This will probably take a lot longer with computers very, very dark, right? So we obviously need to keep adding lights into our scene. I'm going to click off here. Let's go ahead and add an area light, which is going to, I'm going to hit E, and I'm going to bring this up. And then I actually want to point it downwards, so I'm going to rotate it. Holding down Shift, Control. Oh, let me do this again. If I click and hold down Control, which one allows me to do Shift? Nope. Control? I thought one of them allowed me to get a perfect rotation. Let me actually look under the area spotlight object itself. Let's go to coordinates, and let's just do, nope, not that way. Yep, that way. So 90. Wrong way. -90. There we go. Pointing down. Let's expand this area light. So if I move up, or if I go into this view right over here, and I look in my top view panel, the second one to the right, and I select my area light, and if I zoom in here, zoom in real quick, I can see this starts to get a little bit kind of chaotic looking, and it's okay, but there's these little orange, tiny little orange options right there. You can expand it by clicking and dragging that way, and then this way as well. So I'm going to jump out of this view, go back into this view. Let's look through our camera. Let's see what this does. Hitting Control R again to see what happens. It might just blow it out to Kingdom Come because that's what looks like it's happening right now, but we'll find out. If you need to use standard materials and standard lighting, you just hit Shift and the C, and you search in light, right? If you search in Spotlight, it'll give you the option for the standard ones as well. So if you're having troubles, because the Redshift renderer, basically what it is it's a GPU style rendering process. And so it uses all the power of your GPU to render it out. Well, some computers might have a hard time with that. And if yours does, it's okay. You can use the standard view. Let's see. Are you going to do it for me? Probably not. I might just get out of this. Okay, let me grab this area light. Let's go to the object. Let's drop the intensity a bunch. Let's bring up this render region, kind of draw that right around here, and see if it'll render what it'll look like for me. All right, we're getting a little bit more further. Again, you can change things like the color, the temperature of this light, all sorts of things, right? So you can still update your light options here, dropping down the intensity, expanding the shape of your light. You can change the shape of your light down here as well. That is way too bright. So let's change the temperature of this light first of all. Bring this down a little bit more. Let's bring this way up because maybe it's just way too big. Oh, again, uncheck. Maybe I shouldn't look through my camera at all because that seems to be my issue today. Make this a little smaller, bring it upwards, grabbing this and bringing it upwards a little bit more. Maybe we'll have better time that way. Let's go back into here. and just do a quick render region. Clicking this, doing this. There we go. We're getting a little bit further there. That looks nice. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to render this out. I'm going to go to my edit render settings, and I'm going to render under the Redshift renderer. Okay. If you are having trouble doing that, you can do the standard renderer. If you do the standard renderer, you have to change your materials and your lighting to be standard. It will not use the Redshift materials or lighting in it, right? It will not render them out. If you need to render your viewport render, you can select that. This is the fastest option to render your video. If you're going to render it in your viewport renderer, you need to shut off all of the wireframe here by hitting N and A, right? You want to shut off all of the wireframes here so that you don't see them. This will expedite the process of rendering things out. Under your output, we're going to do 1920 by 1080, right? We're going to change that there. We're going to do, you would do all frames. I'm just going to do a current frame here so it does it quickly. Make sure you change your frame rate right here to 24 frames a second. Actually, I do have to do all of them. Let's see this. But let's render one as a test. We'll just do a current frame as a test. We're going to save it to our specific file that we have in our project. So desktop, this one, typography, 3D, PNG sequence. I'm going to save it there. I'm going to change it to a PNG with an, not a PICT, but a PNG with an alpha channel. Make sure you turn that alpha channel on. If you're in the viewport render, you have to go under viewport render, and you have to make sure that you click effects on. You want to show shadows and any transparency. So you have to make sure that's turned on as well as reflections. And then you go to filter and click geometry only. This is a big one. If you don't click geometry only, it will show all of these lines of your camera. It will show everything else. And so you'll have to re-render it out without any of that stuff. So I'm just going to go to output. We're going to just render this frame real quick and see what happens with this Redshift lighting and materials with the viewport render. Because if it doesn't work, if you're using the viewport render, you're going to need to use standard materials and stuff. So I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to hit render to picture viewer. And I think that's done. What the heck? I'm going to hit H here. Looks like it's done. It took 1 second. It didn't render it appropriately. 1920. Is my resolution right? Maybe my, oh yeah. 108, that doesn't make sense. 1080. I got sausage fingers, mama. My sausage fingers. Yeah, I want to overwrite it. My sausage fingers don't allow me. Yeah, see, it's black because you need to use standard materials and stuff. So if you're going to use that viewport render, you have to make sure that you're using standard materials. Same as if you're using the standard renderer. You want to use standard materials. If you're using the standard one, you don't have to go in and do all the other stuff with the viewport renderer where you had to go to viewport render, change that, and click this stuff. You shouldn't have to do that, right? And then if we're using the Redshift renderer, let's see what that looks like when I do my frame. Perfect, same spot, same settings. We're going to just click off that, and we're going to render one frame. Yes, let's overwrite it. This one's going to take a lot longer because there's multiple passes, right? So each one is going to take a little while for it to, each one of these little squares is like a core in your computer, and it takes a while for that to render this out. It will tell you, if I increase this, it will tell you on the side how long each frame takes to render out. If I go to info, layer, let me see, history here, it took like less than a second for this short one, And it took, it didn't even take a full second for this one, right? But this one took 36 seconds for me to render one frame. And I have 120 of these. So you guys need to keep that in mind when you're going to render out your project, right? You want to make sure that you render out with the appropriate amount of time based on whatever your project is going to be rendered with, whatever engine you're going to be using to render, which means if you're going to be using the viewport render, the Redshift render, yada, yada, yada. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my folder. I'm going to delete that image, and then I'm going to render this out. And in the meantime, while this is rendering, we're going to jump into After Effects. Delete that. Let's go over. We're going to go to our render settings again. Everything was good. The one thing I wanted to do was actually move my text down slightly so it's on the floor, so there's no issue on the floor. And I actually like that light backdrop with that metallic kind of car paint material on here. I think it looks actually really nice, so I'm going to keep that. Kind of monochromatic look. Just make sure, yes, that's appropriate. Everything's right. Let's render this 24 frames a second, not current frame, all frames. We want to do all of them. Now I can go ahead and start rendering this, and it will start working on all of these. And let's see if we can work on some stuff inside of After Effects in the meantime. So I'm going to open up After Effects. I don't know if you'll be able to do this both with your guys' computer. We will see how my computer handles it because this might be interesting. Are you guys hanging in there? The 3D stuff is fun. The Redshift materials look a lot nicer. So if you have the ability to do it, I would do it that way. If you're going to work at the computers and in the lab, they should be able to handle this as well. Well, let's see. What is this? My timeline? Oof. Let's reset. Go to GCC one. Perfect. Now I'm going to save this project. Save as. We're going to go to my typography one. After Effects. We're going to save typography. There we go. Put my name after it or something. And let's go ahead and set up this project. I'm going to, first of all, create a main composition. And let's go ahead and make sure everything's appropriate. 1920, 1080, 24 frames a second. Let's make this, because we're going to have a few different compositions in here. Let's do 30 seconds for our main. I'm going to hit OK. And then let's make a folder here that says assets, because we're going to bring in those PNG sequences from our 3D one. And then we want to make one called comps. Let's change this here. All capital. I'm going to drop this main one right into my comp folder. And then if you need to add anything else, you guys can add them. But we're just kind of beginning setup here, right? And so in my main composition, I'm going to, I'm actually going to close out. Let's make a new comp here. That's going to be the good, better, best. Easing, right? This one we're going to be doing different types of easing. And 1920, 1080 is great. Let's make this 10 seconds and we'll adjust it as needed. We'll say okay. And we're going to go into that to this specific composition. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to turn my title action sequence on so that I can see it here in my comp. And then I'm going to create a new solid. Let's do kind of, let me think. Let's do something a little bit more out of the normal. Let's do like a pink and purple. Kind of like this. Drop it down here. Actually, for the background, let's do a more subtle color. Remember, composite, like part of the module. I'm sorry, my mind went blank for a second. Part of the thing is about consistency over like the videos or color palette, right? So as long as your color palettes, if they're not the same in every single scene, that's okay, but just make sure it's an appropriate color palette. So let's go ahead and pick kind of like this. I'm actually going to do like a kind of a taupe color, maybe like that. That looks cool. A soft orange. And we want to add text into our scene. So I'm actually going to lock this so I can't move it. And up here you have your text tool. And if you click on it, it will automatically go in there. You can also hit T on your keyboard, which will bring up the text tool. Now you can do a couple different things. You can click and start writing. Or what you can do is you can draw a text box. So if you needed a specific, let me delete that layer there. If you needed it to fit within a specific area, you can click and drag, and what happens is there's a text box that is created, and when you're typing, it automatically stays within those bounds. Versus if I were to click off of here, grab my type tool, hit click, and then just start typing and hit enter, it's going to there's not going to be bounds to it. So a couple different options you guys have when it comes to writing text out. I'm going to set up my scene. I want to make sure that everything's going to be aligned here. So we're going to design it first and then we'll start animating. I'm just going to click and I'm going to type in good. And I'm going to select off that layer. I'm going to make each one its own layer. I'm going to duplicate this one. I'm going to type in better, B-E-T-T-E-R. And then I am going to duplicate that one and type in best. And for the sake of you guys being able to see, I am going to change the colors of these. Green and indigo. So that you guys can see the layers when I click on them. Now, I'm going to just hide these, the better and best. And I probably should have done this before I duplicated these out and created. I probably should have picked out my font and decided like how I want it to look first. If you come into your previous panel, which if I go to, let me go back to default here. I'm sorry, properties panel, not preview. Let me just drag this down to the bottom here. So this all looks like what you guys have been seeing for the last however long. Is my composition not open, sir? There we go. Okay, so if I grab this text and I'm in my properties panel over here, and I can see that in here you get the options to adjust your text. So you can change the type of text, you can change the weight of your text, the size. It is great practice to change the size of your text, your font size, and not necessarily the scale of the layer. Getting this right the first time is going to be much more helpful. And then this right here is the leading, which is also the space in between your lines. So this will be line spacing. So if you increase that and I were to hit enter here, it would change. Like if I were to do this, hit enter and type in something else, and then increase select all of it first of all, Control A, and then I were to change the leading, that changes the line space. I'm going to undo that. A good rule of thumb when it comes to updating the leading of type, sorry, let me just fit this in the screen, is to maybe go like, I would say no more than 20 pixels larger than what your font size is. And that should be okay with like the spacing of your lines. And then finally, this is your kerning. So if I were to select the font and then increase this, it would change the spacing of my text. But I like the text the way it is. I'm probably going to drop this down to 125 and actually 150. Let's do that. And I'm going to grab this and I'm going to select Y to grab my anchor point tool, and I'm going to click and drag this over to the left-hand side center of my text. And then I'm actually going to grab my better text and move it down, hit P on my keyboard, bring this down here. I'm going to change the size first. So this one was, my good was 150. Let's change better to, I know it said double the font size, so that would be 300, but I think that's going to be really big. So let's do 250 here. And let's keep that at the regular. Let's change this good to a thin font, right? Because updating the weight will help as well. Maybe a little bit, maybe just light helps a little bit more. I think that thin's cool. Let's stick with thin. And then with this better, we're going to grab this anchor point and move it over here to the side again. Doing as best as you can to line it up on that little dot. And then finally, best, I'm going to select that font. We're going to probably do 350 on that one. And let's change this one to bold. A big old chunky boy. Then we're going to move that over, that anchor point over. And now I know these are kind of all over the place. So I'm going to select all of these layers, and then I'm going to go to my alignment panel over here, and I'm going to align panels to selection. That's going to move them all to the same spot right over here on the like vertical on your y-axis. It's going to just align them all up together. And then what I want to do is I kind of want to move them all around, but not separately here. And so I'm going to create a null object. I'm going to right click down here and select null object. And what that is it's a blank layer that allows you to essentially kind of tell it what to do. And it can do, you can take your layers and you can do something called parenting them to this null object. So I'm going to select all these layers here, and I'm going to grab this little tool down here which is called a pickwick, and I'm just going to click and drag it to the null. You can also that was, if I click over here, right, come on, zoom in for me. I think my computer will explode if I try Redshift. Possibly. Let's hope not. Anyways, my program's not allowing me to zoom in here, but over on the side there's like a list of things. If you just drop down and just select the null, that will also do what's called parenting, and it's essentially attaching these layers to this null object, which is going to work like a control. So I can just grab this without having to mess their alignment up, and I can kind of move this text wherever I want it to go without having to change the position necessarily of all of these just quite yet. And so I want them all, because they're aligned perfectly on the y-axis, I want to bring them over here and line them up within my title action sequence right to this like second box that's in here. I might move it over just a hair more, and then I'm just going to delete that null, and that links these layers because that null is no longer there. And now I have individual control again of my layers. If you wanted to keep the null there, all you would have to do is click on this little parent and link list and just select none, and that will unparent them from each other. But I'm going to go here, select all of them, and I'm going to hit P on my keyboard. And I want to start changing this Y position of each one of them, so they're about evenly spaced from each other. So I'm going to bring this one, let's start with the word better, and kind of center that in our composition. So if I look at my title action sequence, I have these little lines right here, and then like a crosshair right here and a line here, and then lines here. That indicates where like the center of your composition is. And so I'm just going to grab this word better and just kind of try and line it up the best I can. Just moving my y-axis. And then I want to kind of distribute the word good and best from this word better. So I'm going to start with the word good, and maybe just bring it, it was kind of okay, kind of halfway between this line right here in the center. And I'm going to do the same with the word best. Now we're visually separating these out, right? Because this word good is obviously much smaller than the word best. And so it's not going to go all the way up to this line right up here. You kind of have to visually be like, okay, well, the space between these words is similar, is about the same. I'm probably going to drop the word best down just a little bit here. Get that spacing right. And then if I turn off my title action sequence real quick, it looks okay, but there's still a little bit too much space up at the top and the bottom. It's a little bit too tight down there. So I'm going to again create that null object, select all of these layers, grab this drop down here and select null 2. And then I'm just going to grab this null, hit P on my keyboard, and just bring that up so they're about the same distance from the bottom, from the word best to the bottom of the composition, and from the top of the word good to the top of the composition. So it might not, visually everything looks centered, but if I turn on my title action save, it might not just be centered technically, right? But visually it all looks evenly spaced and centered out. So I'm going to delete that. And we're actually going to just be animating the X position on all of these. So I'm going to grab the positions, hitting Control, and I'm going to right click and separate all these dimensions out. And then we're just going to keyframe. We're going to move ahead a little bit on our timeline because we're going to work backwards and we're going to block this animation out. I'm going to move my playhead to probably 1 second here. Maybe a second and a half, 1 second, 12 frames. And I'm just going to keyframe my X position. And then I'm going to select all my layers and hit U, so all I'm seeing are my keyframes. I'm going to grab my playhead and move it to the front. And then we're going to move these, we're actually going to move the text off screen because this text is going to come from off screen. It's going to animate on screen. And then it's going to stay on screen for a little while. And then it's going to move off screen, right? And so I'm putting these about the same spot. So right now, my animation that I have, it moves to this section. Let's see if the timing's okay. Might be a little slow. We'll adjust that later. But then I'm going to take from this 1 second, 12 frames. I'm going to move ahead probably... Let's go to 4 seconds, 12 frames. So we've got 3 seconds of the text just being on screen in one spot, right? And I'm going to select each one of these keyframes separate and hit Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V, copying, pasting, so that between this position here and this position here, it's the same values on those keyframes, so nothing's changing, right? It's staying on screen. It's going to pause on screen for 3 seconds. And then after this, we're going to go over to 6 seconds. And we're going to move everything off screen the opposite way. So, good, better, best, good. All of these. Sayonara. Move them off screen. Right? There we go. And so we have this animation blocked out. Let me go ahead and hit N on my keyboard over here so we just shorten that play work area. I'm going to play it here. Good, better, best. And all of my, everything's all linear, right? So the motion is all linear. We're going to adjust that here in a second. I feel like possibly having these start off and end on screen in the same spot will be helpful. So let's type this in manually. -950. I moved my playhead. So in order to adjust these keyframe values, I want to move my playhead over to whatever keyframes I want to adjust. It has to be directly on top of them. And then I'm just going to select each one of these values and just manually type them in here. So they all end up in the same spot. And I think that will be helpful. And then same over here at the end when it animates off screen. Let's go ahead and let's do 2000. I think that'll be okay. Yeah. 2000. 2000. There we go. So they're all going to move off and move on at the exact same time. They looked a little like some of them were lagging behind a little bit because of where they had to continue to go in position. Because the positions didn't match up exactly when they're off screen both times. So now we've blocked it out. Let's adjust the timing a little bit. I think that it's a little bit too slow. So I'm going to grab these last keyframes here. And I'm just going to move these so that it takes a second to move on screen. Let's see how good that is. And then move these last keyframes in here to shorten that time up. And it'll still be on screen for 3 seconds. Let's see. Yep. Good, better, best. 3 seconds to read. Zooms off screen. Perfect. I think that works good. So a 5-second animation total. And let's go ahead and start easing these. So I'm going to select all of the keyframes. I'm going to hit F9 on my keyboard. And we're going to go into our graph editor here. And we are going to start with the good animation. And when I select my X position here, I want to make sure that you're in the value graph here. We'll start there and then we'll look at the speed graph in a second. And what we want to happen is we want this to kind of start fast and then slow down, like ease into this keyframe here, into this resting position, right? And so I'm going to grab this first keyframe and I'm just going to drag this up a little bit because this one's supposed to be good easing, but it's not supposed to be the best easing. And then I'm going to do this opposite on this side. So I'm going to grab this and kind of just straighten out that curve a little bit more so that when I play it now, it's going to slow into position. We're going to shut these off so you guys can focus on that one. And I'll shut the title action safe off now that we have everything blocked out. We'll select this. And when we play it, it eased into the position. And then it's going to ease out of that position and you know, go off screen. That's supposed to be our good one. Let's move on to our better easing of our text. I'm going to select this one and we're going to do similar, but we're going to exaggerate that curve a little bit more. So we're going to kind of bring that up a little bit like this and do the same over here. Bringing that up a little bit. Let's kind of try and visually figure out so the curves are almost the same. So this little handle, this Bezier handle I brought it kind of over to the edge as far as it'll go. And then I brought it maybe about halfway from one box, right? Like this one box into this box here. So 1.5. And then if I select this first keyframe here, I want to make sure I did the same. So 1.5 right about there. And now when I play this, you're going to see that this easing looks a little bit better than this one, right? They're ending up, the timing of both of these animations is the same. It's just that the easing is adjusted. So this one's going to start off faster and slow into this position a little bit slower. Not a problem, Maria. Not a problem. Welcome into the chat. We're just doing our typography project. We started it. We probably won't get to finishing the, we'll go over the rest of the bouncing ball animations maybe on Tuesday's class likely. So I'm going to play that. That easing looks much better. And now we're going to do the same with the best, the word best. We're going to turn that one on. We're going to select here. But we're going to exaggerate this one out even more. So I'm going to drag this up, curve out, and then grab this one and drag this out just a little bit, holding down shift. And so now when we play it, this one's going to have the best easing, right? It's going to start off fast and slow up into this resting spot really smoothly. All right, nice. Good, better, and best. Zooming off screen. So I'm going to save my project. I'm going to, let's add motion blur to everything. So I'm going to click all those, making sure that my motion blur is turned on. So that's going to sell the speed a little bit better, right? Good, better, best. Looks pretty nice. Let's update the color of our text because the text is kind of blurring. Let's change the fill. I can change this over here in my properties. Let's change this to like that purpley, violety pink color. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe I'll change the background a little bit. Up update the color. I like that color right there. Cool. And then if I want to update this solid background, I can just hit, I think, Control Alt K, Shift Control K. Which one is it? Layer, solids, Y, Control Shift Y. Sorry. Let me take this and let me just lighten that up just a little bit. There we go. Made it a little bit cooler there. Okay, cool. Good, better, best. Making sure that it's legible. You know, maybe I want to darken this type up just a little bit. All right, that works. Can change these type, all of the, they don't all have to be the same color, but this just helps it to be cohesive. And I don't have a ton of time right now, so I want to move on to the next one. But that's the first one inside of After Effects. Let's go ahead and create a new composition. Actually, let's trim this comp to the 5 seconds. 5 seconds here. So, in fact, we'll do the 5.5. I'm just going to right click here and trim my composition to the work area. And what that's going to do is just going to trim that up to the 5.5 seconds, right? So now it's 5.5 seconds long. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go into my main comp and I'm going to bring this one in here to sit here on the composition thing. And then I am going to, let's create a new composition. Comps, new comp. We'll leave it at the 10 seconds. Everything looks good. Let's type fade here. I'm going to be in this comp. We're going to use the same solid. That pale orange. I'm going to drag that down in here. And then I'm going to write the word fade. F-A-D-E. Perfect. It's the appropriate color. And also bold and 350. I'd probably increase this. Maybe let's do 400 for this one. So it's a little bit bigger. I'm going to turn on my title action safe here and line this up to my composition. Let's center it real quick. Drop this down maybe right here. And there we go. So with this animation, what I want to happen is I want the word fade to fade on screen, and then I want these letters to separate out, and for another, like some sentences to pop up in between the word F, or the letter F and the letter A. And so how I'm going to do that is when you just create native text inside of After Effects, it is just that. It is text. It is not a shape. It is not, it's technically just, you know, it's type. But what we want to do is we want to turn these into shapes so we have individual control over each letter. And similar how we hit C inside of Cinema 4D, we're going to right click on the layer and you're going to go to create shapes from text. And when I do that, what's going to happen is it's going to create a new layer called, you know, outlines, and then it's going to hide this bottom layer here, which is good. It's, you know, non-destructive workflow, which is important. And so now though, when I grab these letters, if I unfurl my little folders here, I have each letter separated out, which I also have options to do things like moving them around, right? If I want each one of these to have their own separate anchor point, and like if I wanted these to be on their own separate layer, I would just duplicate this letter or this layer 4 times, go into each content and delete the 3 here. So that would be F. So this layer would be F. I'd come into here, go into the contents. So like, I guess I'll do that for you guys. I don't think it's necessary. I probably won't leave it. I'd rename this layer just to F like that. And then I'd come over here and I'd want to leave A, so I'd delete F, D, and E. And then I'd rename this layer A, right? So you can do it that way if you want to have individual control. Or what you can do is, let me just delete these, is you can just unfurl these little transform properties down and use it as like one one layer, just using each little control in the inside of these. This is a little bit more harder to look at for you guys, I think, than having all of the, actually let me do it the way I was doing it then, because I think it'll be easier for you guys to look at. So this will be the D, or the E, and this one will be D. Let me just do this. I think it'll be easier for you guys to understand it a little bit more. And so then I'm going to hit Enter D, Enter E, changing the names. All right. Now, when I click these, I want to make sure that I update the anchor point. So I'm going to hit Y, and I'm going to shift drag, and I'm actually going to bring the anchor point into the center, bottom center of the letter. Same with A. I'm going to just drag this, holding down shift right there. Same with the D. Shift drag, right about there. And then with E. Shift drag. Oh, grabbing that. And centering it. All right, so I'm going to save here, and I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to hit T, Shift P on my keyboard, so I have both the position property and the opacity. In fact, I'm just going to hit P right now, and then I'm going to right-click all of these. I'm going to select this position property, transform property. I'm going to hit Control, and select the other ones, then right-click and separate my dimensions, because we're only going to be using the X position again. All right. So I'm going to keyframe these, all the X's. Hit U on the keyboard. Hold down Shift and hit T to get the opacity. So I'm going to do that. Keyframe all these opacities. And the first thing I want to do is, so I want it to fade on screen, right? So I'm going to grab all these opacity keyframes that I just created. Or what actually I can do, let's do this a little bit differently. I'm going to just come over here, and in the, oops, let me do this. If I click this little diamond right here, it'll just add a keyframe at that value. So I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to move my playhead back to the beginning and type in 0 on all these opacities here. So that what's going to happen is the words are going to fade on screen. And then I'm going to take these position properties, holding down Control and selecting all the positions. And I'm going to move these over to probably, let's do 30 second or half a second. Let's go 3/4 of a second there. And I'm going to move those position keyframes over here. So it's going to fade on screen, and then I'm going to get ready to move it starting from this section. In fact, I'll move it over to 1 second so that we can work in blocks of time and then adjust the timing of the position later. So I've got this here. It fades on screen, and now we want to separate these letters out. So the F, I'm going to select the F layer, and I'm going to move forward in time to about 1.5 seconds. And I'm going to move this F this way. Now, that whole thing we talked about butting your letters up against the composition, don't do that. If you're going to bring your letters all the way to the edge, bring them over the edge, right? So that they hang off of the edge of the composition over here. And so we're going to bring this over here. It's going to move this way. That looks nice. And then we're going to do kind of the same thing with these. We're not going to move them off screen totally. We're just going to move them over this way. But we're going to change maybe the spacing of them a little bit. So I'm going to start with the A. And I'm going to move that back over a little bit more so it doesn't go as far. And maybe the D over a little bit. To give some visual spacing here, I'm going to shut off my title action sequence. See if there's about the same amount of space between the D, the A, D, and the E. So I'm just going to shuffle this over just slightly more. There we go. And so now what's going to happen, fades on screen, and then they're going to separate out. Let's go ahead and ease the position keyframes here. So I'm going to select those and hit F9. on my keyboard. Then we're going to look at the value graphs. And we want these to kind of slowly move into place. So I'm going to grab this as the E. Again, I want these to have very similar easings with each other. So I'm actually going to, I'm going to just bring this first keyframe right over here. I'm going to bring that in nice and tight to the keyframe. And then this one right up here, because I want it to kind of go fast and then slow up into that resting spot. So this one I'm going to drag this Bezier handle out to about there, the 1 second. So one full block over. And then I'm going to do that to the D and the A. So let's do this. Bring this all the way in, holding shift. Grab this one up here, holding shift, bring this out. And then the A. Holding down shift, dragging it out. Selecting this one, holding down shift and dragging that in. And then finally, we'll do that with this one too. It's going to just be opposite. So this one's going to start off kind of fast and then slow into this resting position. So holding down shift, just an opposite looking curve, right? Because it's going in the opposite direction. So if I play this and they move into the appropriate spot, I think it happens a little fast. So let's go in here and adjust the timing. I'm going to grab these keyframes here and I'm going to bring them out so it's a 1 full second, right? So I'm going to bring these last keyframes to 2 seconds to extend the distance between these keyframes is going to extend the time. So there we go. That's nice. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to offset these keyframes so that they'll start moving at a little bit of a different time, and it's going to kind of look like a domino effect. I'm actually going to start with I want the D to move first, the D and the F. So I'm going to leave these two in this spot, but I'm going to grab the A and the D letter. And I'm just going to move those over. Let's see if I hit Control and the arrow key. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see how this looks, because it might be a little bit too drastic, but we'll find out. 4 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to grab the D. Oh, I'm sorry, the A, because that's going to be the last one to move, and sequence that over. This is called offsetting or sequencing your keyframes. And so now what you see happens is the starting time of each animation just varies. It's just offset by 4 frames for each letter. But because the letters separating out this way, I want to start backwards and move in, right? So if I play this, let's see how it looks. Not bad. I think the easing could use a little adjustment. And then let's move these only 2 frames away. So 1, 2, I'm going to move this one in there and then just hit 1, 2 and then move the A back in a little bit to tighten up that spacing. And then let's grab these and let's go into our here. Let's do this a little bit differently. I'm going to grab the E. And in fact, I'm going to start a little bit slower and then get into that. So maybe half of a block. Let's do the same with the D. Grab this one. Holding down shift, go only about a half of a block. You have to think of where it starts too, right? The A is already starting like almost half of the block. So we're going to move to right about there with that Bezier handle. Holding down shift. A little bit right there. And then we'll do that with the F as well. Grabbing this one, holding down shift and kind of dragging that in. So now it's going to have a little bit of a slower start. It's going to speed up and then slow into position. There we go. That looks really nice. I'm going to save that. And we are going to, let's go ahead and type out some sentences here. First of all, let's make this size 200. Even less than that. Let's go to 100. And let's change from bold to, let's do light. Okay. And we're going to say Typography We're going to have to make this smaller. Here, we'll just do type can be faded by enter by word. And I'm going to grab this text layer, move it up here. I'm going to move this over a little bit. Let's kind of adjust it. First of all, let's make this 50. Let's see how that works. A little bit small. Let's go up to 75. There we go. Maybe. Again, the spacing of the leading is too much. And remember, I said that 20-point rule. So 75. Let's do 15 points. So let's do 90. Actually, 95 should work perfect. And then I am going to drop this down to 65. I think that'll be okay. And then finally over here, you get a paragraph option, left align that sucker. Okay. And then we're going to change hit Y. We're going to update this to the center left. We are going to turn back on our title action safe. And we're actually going to hit Control R as Robert on our keyboard. And what happens is you get rulers that show up on the left and the top hand side. And if you move your mouse over this ruler thing, it gives you like these arrows. Well, you can click and drag a ruler down into your view and it will not animate, or I mean, it will not show up when you render. So I'm just going to do this so I can see where the bottom and the top of my letters are, and I'm going to line these up appropriately to the top and the bottom, right? So this first sentence, type can be faded by word. I'm going to drag this over and line it up right here about midway between the F and the A. And then I'm going to duplicate this layer and hit P on my keyboard and bring this down to the bottom here. And what I'm noticing right away, right, because I'm going to bring my words, maybe not the bounding box. Notice that this is the bounding box, right? I'm going to make sure the letters actually line up onto these rulers that I've created. So the by word are actually sitting on this line here. And I'm probably going to maybe just make these a little bit smaller. Probably 60 helps it a little bit more. Same with this one. Whatever you do to one, make sure you change to the other. The position of these are almost there. I'm going to bring this one at the top up just slightly so that the words are touching this ruler that I created. It's kind of hard to see this ruler, but it's there. And then if you want to just get rid of these, all you got to do is click and drag them back up off to this ruler bar and they're gone. Right? Now we're going to animate these, but we are going to use some presets here. So first of all, this layer cuts off right here. It only starts there. I'm going to drag this all the way to the front. What I mean by that is if I change a layer color to green, let's change both of these to green, right? This layer starts at the beginning and goes all the way here, and this layer just kind of cuts off there. I'm just going to drag that up so they just start at the same spot. And I don't want these to start fading in until these letters, like the word fade is like almost finished in spot, right? So I'm probably going to start to fade them in right about that 2-second mark. And we're actually going to use an effect. So I'm going to come over to my effects and presets bar over here. And let's see what I want to, that one is, okay. We're actually going to look specifically for it. So I'm going to click over here, and in the animation presets, this is the top little folder. You can unfurl that, and there's this option that says text. I'm going to unfurl that text box here, and we're going to go to animate in, which is going to animate our text into the frame, right? Animating out is animating off screen. Animating in is essentially animating onto the screen. And so we want to go over here and we want to fade up. We want to, actually, first of all, I have to change this. Type can be faded by word and type can be faded by letter. Okay, because these are going to fade on in 2 different ways. So the first one by word, we're going to go back to, we're going to make that smaller. We're going to go back over here, and there's an option that says fade up words. We're just going to click and drag that to the appropriate layer that says text can be faded by word. And if when I drag that on, if I hit U on my keyboard on that layer, all of a sudden I have these keyframes on there. And they're there's already easing and stuff on these, but these it's fading on by word, so it's appropriate to what the type says. And then I'm going to do the same right here, right? So we're going to fade this on by letter. Well, inside of any design, it's called characters, right? So we're going to go to fade up characters. And we're going to drag and drop that one onto here as well. And so now when I play, these sentences fade onto, if I hit U, actually, let's line up these keyframes, right? So the fade up by word happens a little bit faster. Let's just take this last keyframe and move that up on our timeline a little bit more so they're close to each other, right? That's good. A little bit offset here is okay. But I'm just going to save that. And so now we have this animated text where we have separate letters animated. And then we're also using some presets to mess around with. Now, you don't actually have to change the easing on here if you don't want to. Unfortunately, when you're using text animators like these presets, it's more complex when it comes to easing. You can't just select the keyframe and hit F9. It won't ease them the same way. You have to do it in different settings. So I'm not going to make you guys do that for this, but just make sure that you have the appropriate effect on the appropriate text. All right, friend, have a good night. We will get to your bouncing ball project on Tuesday's class. We'll go over all the stuff there and any kind of typography projects that are left over or that are already there. All right, so we have 1, 2, we have our good, better, best. We have our fade sequence here. The only thing that we have to do now is our contact information, the one that you guys can follow with me. So let's bring this, first of all, let's open this back up. And where does it end? About 5 seconds. We'll do the same. We'll go to 5.5 seconds. I'm going to hit N on my keyboard, and then I'm going to right click and trim the comp to the work area. And then I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to drag this composition in and then move this one. We're going to sequence it, right? So we can watch play one right after another. So I'm just going to come up here. It's going to go good, better, best. That'll be on for about 5 seconds. I could even shorten that if I wanted to. Fade. That looks good. This one, let's fade this off screen, right? So in our main composition, let's zoom in on our thing here. Over at 10.5 seconds here, let's fade this whole composition off. So we're actually going to type in fade up here. And let's see, fade out. Let's see if that one is the one that I'm looking for. Nope, that's not the right one. Under, not text. We're not looking at text. Fade out over the layer below. Now, let's transitions. Not that one. Let's try this one. Let's see if it does work. Oh, that fades. Yeah, that's perfect. That works fine. But when you're fading it out, you're going to have to make sure, because if I hit U on my keyboard, oh, that one's crazy. Let's just do it with, let's delete that. Let's just do this with opacity keyframes. So I'm going to hit T. We're going to start at 100, and we want to fade off to 0 at 11 seconds. So I'm just going to hit 0 there. And whenever we drop in our next, when we drop in this contact information down here, or, yeah, when we drop that in down here, we're going to need to make sure we place that composition below this fade one where these keyframes are, or else as this fades, it's just going to go to black. And we want it to fade off to reveal the layer below it, right? So Let's go ahead and go back to our project. We're going to create another composition. 10 seconds is fine. I'll type contact info. Perfect. I'm going to put this in here. We're going to bring in that pale orange again. In fact, I'd probably change maybe the color of these if I had more time. Update these ones. All right, let's look at, we got 15 minutes. Let's see what we can do that's more fun than what we did before. Okay. 1 second. I'm just looking at some stuff. Okay, let's look at, I'm going to look at contact information cards online, and maybe there's like something that we could get that maybe would be fun to look at. That one's neat with the lines. This is kind of cool. Actually, let's maybe do something with a shape in the type. Okay. So, the first thing that we're going to do, title action sequence. Now, we're going to be putting in our contact information here, right? Our name, our email address, maybe not phone number, but maybe like Instagram, because this is the information that we're going to be giving our clients at the end of our reels. And so you want that information to direct them where to go if they need to, or how to contact you, right? And so usually Instagram or whatever kind of handle, social media handle would be fine. Emails are great. Like what if you had a work email, you could do that. And then your name, obviously, right? If you don't want to put the correct information for class, like you don't want your actual information out there, that is perfectly fine. You don't have to have that information. Just make something up that is appropriate, that can be used as like a placeholder for that information, right? And then whenever later on down the road, when you're updating your contact information to actually get a job, you can update it to the correct stuff. So you don't have to worry if you're nervous about using your actual information. You don't have to. Just make sure it's appropriate. So I'm going to grab my type tool, and the first thing I'm going to type out is my name. So Amanda McCara. And then I'm going to, let's see here. Let's change the color first of all. Let's duplicate this. And this is going to be my email address, amanda.mccara@gccaz.edu. And then great one to do also is a website, right? So I'm going to do my email address. I'm going to duplicate this again. And then I'm going to type in my amandamccara.com. Okay. I'm going to, let's hide these two. Let me grab this one. Let's make this one bold. Let's increase the size. Let's do 125. And let's change hit Y on our keyboard to grab this pan behind or the anchor point tool. And I'm going to move this again, center left. It doesn't have to, it just depends on where you want the motion to come from. Remember that. And then this one, my email address, I'm going to select. And I like the size of that, 60. Let's do 65, just a little, no, 60 will be okay. And let's, again, update this one. And then same with this, right? These two information should be similar. Let's just move this down a little bit more. I could put the www if I want to, but I'm not going to. Either way, amandamccara.com. Perfect. And then I'm going to grab all of these layers and align them to the left again. So they're all lined up. And then let's go ahead and let's create it. Let's select all these layers. Here's another way to attach these to an all, is if you have all your layers selected, and you right click and you hit new null object, it will create that control. Usually it connects everything with it right away, but for some reason it didn't do it in this instance. So I just have to select all my layers, grab this drop down over here under the parent link and hit null. And then I'm going to select that null and just kind of move everything again over to the left hand side. And likely I'm going to probably line up my name in the center and then let's move this layer up top, kind of order them appropriately. And then in fact, I'm going to swap these out. So this one I want to move maybe right there. And this one I want to be below a little bit further. There we go. Lined up nicely, good spacing in between them. Okay, save this. And let's animate these into place. I'm going to use a position keyframes. We're going to do Y position as well. So P, let's select the position parameter, control click the other ones, right click, separate these dimensions. And we're going to just animate the Y position. Since these are already in place, I'm just going to move ahead a half a second and keyframe them in their current position. And then I'm going to move up, I'm going to bring my playhead over to the front. And then I'm going to grab all of these and I'm going to move them up off screen. So they're going to drop in from the top of the screen here. And so when I play this, what's going to happen is they're all going to drop at the same time. Well, we're going to sequence these out, right? So the animations, first of all, we're going to ease it. And then we're going to sequence it so that my website will drop first, then my email address, and then my name. Make sure that when you're animating text, it never crosses each other. You don't ever want them to animate over top of each other because then it becomes illegible, right? You can't read it. And since it's coming from off screen, I'm going to leave that first keyframe. We're going to see if we can get away with leaving those just linear, right? Because it's off screen. I'm going to select these. I'm going to grab my Y position of this first one, and I'm going to drag this over, holding down Shift, and just accentuate those curves in my value graph right here as well, so that it's going to start off fast and slowly move into place, right? So we have those moving. That looks a little fast. Let me just go to my dope sheet view, select all the layers, hit U, grab these keyframes, and maybe just drag them out to 3/4 of a second, right? And now I want to have my website start animating first. So I'm going to offset these two layers. I'm going to move over 2 keyframes, and then I'm going to grab this top one with my name and just offset that 2 keyframes. And so now it'll start with my website to my email address, and then finally my name will settle in after. That's cool. Now, before, what we would do is animate in a layer that had, actually, let's try that. Let's create a new solid, or let me delete this null first of all. We don't need that anymore. Layer, new, solid. Let's create, this one's going to be kind of like that pink color I was talking about. So, like a light pink. That looks good. Okay. This is what we're going to do. We'll do this and then we'll see if we can get some more cool stuff. I'm going to drag this down here, maybe right to there, right under my name. So it sits right up at my name. And we'll keyframe the position, right? So this is going to animate down maybe when, so if I look at the keyframes of my name, hitting U, and it settles down right before the 1 second mark. So maybe right before that is where, or right after that is where this is going to settle into place. So I'm going to grab this layer and I moved it down, and I'm going to keyframe the position of this. And moving back, 1 full second, right? So this is at 1 second, 6 frames. I'm just going to move back here and keyframe the position opposite, right? So it's going to go from the bottom up. And we're going to ease that last keyframe there. I'm going to grab this here. Oops. Because my dimensions aren't separated, I'm only easing these last 2 keyframes. I have to separate the dimensions. So if I'm already here, you can right click and do that. Or if you click this little button down here at the bottom, it says separate dimensions, and that will do it for you. And then I can just shut off the X position, right? Because that's not being animated. I'm going to grab this last one. I'm just going to drag it down like this, holding down shift. Make that a nice smooth curve, right? So that's going to come up. And obviously right now I've covered up all my information, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to add an effect on here called invert. I think that's the one that's called. Let's see here. I think it's invert channel. Let's see here. Under my effects, I'm going to type invert. Yeah. Under the channel option here, there's a folder that's like a channel folder. You're going to want to grab the invert and drag that onto your layer. And so what that's going to do is it's going to invert that option there. Actually, which one do I throw that on? I think it's opposite. I think I put it on these ones. Let's see. Where's that? Let me hide this. Let me grab this here. Put it on. I'm going to drop it on my. Drag this down. Like that. Cool. Okay, yeah. So you drop it on your text. And it'll invert your text, I believe. Nope. Maybe it's because I drag this layer down. There we go. Let's remove this invert here. Let's put this one here. There. Let me see real quick. What do I need to do? I think it's an adjust. It's actually not on here. I think I need to put it on an adjustment layer. Let's delete that from that. Let me go. We're gonna create an adjustment layer, which is essentially like a blank layer, right? Kind of like that null. But with the adjustment layer, you can add effects to it that will affect everything moving down below it, right? So if I take that adjustment layer and then I throw this invert onto there, there we go. Hey, that's kind of a cool color. But when it's inverting everything. Let me see here. Let's see. You know what it is? Is the actual adjustment layer should be inverted and there shouldn't be a solid here. So easy fix, right? I've got the solid animated, but I actually want to animate the adjustment layer. If you select your solid and you hit U, you've got keyframes already positioned on here. Well, if I move my playhead to the same spot where the animation starts, and then I grab my adjustment layer, remember that blank layer that we can add anything to, and I'm going to hit P on my keyboard because adjustment layers you can animate just like other ones. I'm going to right click and separate dimensions because you have to separate your dimension in order to copy paste. They have to be, your properties have to be the same, right? And I'm going to select this Y position property and I'm going to hit Control C. And then I'm going to grab the position, the Y position property of the adjustment layer and hit Control V. And it and it adds that animation to this adjustment layer automatically. So then I can go and delete this solid layer right there. And what'll happen is that this, well, that's exactly what it was. Sorry, you guys. Just took me a second to figure out what I needed to do. But you create the adjustment layer, and then you add that invert to that adjustment layer, and you actually animate the adjustment layer and not a solid. So, and when you do that, you've got this like inverted kind of thing that happens when it runs over there. Obviously, if you need to adjust the color of your compositions until you can get something that looks a little bit different, you can do that, but it's going to invert it to the opposite of what this is, right? So maybe I would change my name to be more of like a blue to match this, right? So, or a green to match that. So maybe I'd go to, maybe I'd want to do this and get maybe this green color, but, ooh, that's the exact color. I could just drop this down and get like a different blue shade or a different green shade. Kind of looks a little bit darker there. That's cool. So kind of looks like this, but then it finishes up there. You guys can do what you want with like the color aspect of it. But, you know, this is a quick contact information card. I was going to do some stuff with some shapes. Maybe we'll do that one on Tuesday's class, but we've pretty much run out of time here, so I wanted to just kind of quickly show you guys what I've done in the past for this project. And then we're going to throw this also into our main composition, right? So I'm going to click off of there. I'm going to grab this contact information. Let's close that there. I'm going to grab the contact information pre-comp and drag that in here. And then I want to make sure that I bring it, that I drag it over here, right? Under that fade, those transparency keyframes that I made those opacity ones, so that while this fades off, my contact information is fading on, right? So we can almost sequence this a little bit differently. Maybe we shorten this up and move this over so it's a little bit faster. But as long as there's a layer under these opacity keyframes, then it will reveal that layer. It's like a transition, right? And then we'll have our contact information. Let's shorten this up to probably 4 or 5 seconds. Hit N, trim comp to work area, and save it. And then you'll be creating a contact information card of your own design, right? So you can have fun with that one. Just making sure you don't do corner text, making sure that your alignment, making sure that you're paying attention to the hierarchy of animation, right? Or of typography. But you're going to also want to, you can see right here that this is still animating. I'm on 103 frames. It's taken a little while, so you can see my computer's taking a while to do this. If you can only imagine what your computers might take a little while to do. So I'm going to let this continue rendering, right? And once this is done, I'm going to import a PNG sequence into my After Effects file and drop that down in my main comp as well. So I have that on there. So you'll, in addition to those 3 that we just created in After Effects, you'll have this 3D one that you've created in Cinema 4D, and then you'll also have your contact information page where you get like creative freedom with it. Let me turn my camera on real quick. I know that some of you have probably already left the chat. Are we spamming? That's sweet. All right. Heck yeah, let's finish it up. Let's get to our weekend, right? If I bring this over here, we look at this project, right? We have a due date range. So if you guys can get this done by the 19th, that's great. But you have until the 26th to get this done as well. So as long as your projects aren't overlapping too much, you'll be fine. And you can mess around with those a little bit more. Maybe we'll show a different contact information page, one for Tuesday's class, so we can learn in that. But am I tired of talking now? Tuesday's class is going to be review of the rest of the bouncing ball ones. I have 10 of yours right now. Anyone else gets them in, by that time we'll review those as well. We will go over, we'll see how far we get with that. Maybe we'll do another contact information thing and or start our next lesson, right? So, all right, you guys. I hope you guys have a good weekend. I appreciate you sticking around a few more minutes till the end of the class. I don't think we had as many hiccups as far as like dropping the class or anything like that. But if you guys have questions about this, you can always, check out the other videos that are in the module that we've already done stuff for. It's all the same stuff. You can rewatch this, or you can ask me questions in Discord, or ask Belle if she's doing the tutoring and all that stuff. But yeah, enjoy your weekend. Have a good time. Do something fun other than homework, as long as it doesn't interfere with their homework. Have a normal life if you can, even if it's playing video games for an hour, right? Sweet. It only buffered for you once. It's awesome. You guys are the best, by the way. You guys are a very fun class. Do you guys have any questions for me right now before we head out? I'll link the Cinema 4D one. Yeah, you too, Logan. You have a great weekend. I'll link this, by the way, into our module here once I'm done. Probably tonight. If not tonight, early tomorrow. Yeah, guys, have a good weekend. Have some fun. I'll talk to you guys on Tuesday.